Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Pokemon Go, make sure you check out the Poketown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code, Omnipoke. For today's video, myself and Jack are going to be talking about the Pokemon World Championship closing ceremony reveals, essentially the future of the Pokemon trading card game. We got some leaks about the Scarlet and Violet expansion that's happening in 2023, and there was some really exciting stuff. It's the first time ever, actually, that they've given us the reveals on the closing ceremony rather than the opening ceremony. So we knew it was going to be a big one, and they're really trying to nail home that this is going to have a big impact on the TCG. So myself and Jack, we're going to watch the whole thing together. We won't give our reactions till the very end, just in case you have missed it. So yeah, let's get into it, because there's a lot to digest here.
皆さんこんにちは。クリーチャーズの長島です。ご覧いただいた映像は2023年から始まるポケモンカードゲームスカーレット&バイオレットシリーズの世界初公開映像です。ポケモンワールドチャンピオンシップスにご参加の皆様と放送を見てくださっている世界中の方々に向けてご覧いただいた映像についてより詳しくお話ししたいと思います。映像内で登場した EX は今回のシリーズを象徴するロゴとなっており、生命感を感じるスマートな強さを表現したデザインとなっています。ポケモン EX は種、1進化2進化それぞれの進化段階で登場し、高い HP に加えて強力な技や特性を持っている代わりに倒すことができればサイドを2枚取ることができます。そんなポケモン EX の中でも特に2進化のポケモン EX は取られるサイドは2枚ですが、ポケモン VMAX に並ぶ高い HP と少ないエネルギーで強力な技を繰り出せるポケモンが多く、一気に戦況を覆す力を持っています。このように強力な2進化のポケモン EX をはじめ様々なポケモンたちが活躍する幅広い環境になっていきます。さらにスカーレット&バイオレットシリーズでは逆転も大事なテーマになっていて、逆転のきっかけとなり得る能力を持ったポケモン、トレーナーズ、エネルギーなどが登場予定となります。今後シリーズを通してまだ見ぬポケモンやおなじみのポケモンたちもポケモン EX として登場していきますので、続報をお待ちください。ここまでお話をさせていただきましたポケモンカードゲームのスカーレット&バイオレットシリーズは、ポケモンカードゲームのニュースタンダードとしてこれまで以上の拡張性を持たせ、様々な形でゲームに刺激を与えていきます。ぜひこれからのポケモンカードゲームの進化をお楽しみに。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Right, so there's a lot to take in there. Really exceptional trailer. Myself and Jack were actually in the venue at the time, and I don't know about you, Jack, but I was literally screaming at the top of my lungs at this news.
Yeah.
When I saw the symbol of EXs coming back, I literally screeched, "They're coming back!" And there was a lot of great insight from the speaker here from Creatures Inc., who was really giving some interesting news, but we'll take it one step at a time. Its EX is coming back.
Yeah, so for anyone who's unfamiliar, this is harking back to like the Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald days. Two prize Pokemon, little like lowercase EXs was the first introduction to multiple prize Pokemon back in the day, and they're kind of harking back to that. Essentially, they're evolution-based two prizes, which is kind of something we've had with VMAXs and V-Stars, but they all start from two prizes. It looks like, and they've kind of said, we're going back to evolution based 2 prizes that start as 1 prizes, which is I think for a lot of people a huge thing. I think a lot of people way prefer evolving into their 2 prize Pokemon rather than sort of just having 2 prizes into 3 prizes or 2 prizes into 2 prizes or whatever. So I think for a lot of people this was a massive deal. GX is for sort of the newer era, but even old school like Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald EXs, both of these eras are kind of heralded especially in their early forms, as some of the best formats ever of Pokemon. So it's really exciting to see them trying to rehash these mechanics. I think we're starting to see a bit of a cycle where we have this kind of mechanic, then we'll go back to the sort of the 2 prizes, all basics, that kind of thing, and they just seem to keep sort of flipping between these. So it's nice that we're going back to this. We can see here we have basic stage 1s and stage 2s as well, so that kind of confirms that that's what we're going to be expecting. Unfortunately, a lot of the text is covered up for most of these, which means there is going to be a bit of speculation. But I think some of the most important text is being shown, which is the HPs of these cards. It's and they've made a big deal out about in the video as well as just in sort of subsequent texts that they've released about this, that basic EXs are meant to be in line with sort of slightly lower HPV Pokemon of today. Stage 1 EXs are sort of your V-stars of today, and Stage 2 EXs are your V-maxes, which is really, really good in terms of scaling HP. That's one of the biggest things that I think GXs, in some capacity, didn't do great.
Yeah.
Actually, scaling HP properly means that you put all of these resources into getting a Stage 2 to just have like 20 more HP than a basic or a Stage 1. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But like in this video, they also really made a big deal about how Stage 2s are going to be powerful cards. And you can see that with the Magnezone, right? It's got 330 HP, only gives up 2 prizes, and it does 2 for 220, which it does 30 to yourself. But realistically, that's a massive, massive payoff for the amount of resources you have to put into the card to get Stage 2 out. It's still 5 cards of your deck to actually pull off this combo, so it's still a big combo. But at least you're now a 300, I guess, HP Pokemon, dealing 220 HP, 220 damage for 2 energy. It's actually, like, seemingly, just from the first one we've seen, worth the payoff of sort of putting time into these Stage 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, I think that's always been my biggest gripe with Stage 2s, that the payoff isn't always there for the hoops you have to jump through, and I think they're finally addressing that, and I think hit points is a great way to do it. Also, making the energy attack costs low intentionally means that you get to take space out of your energy lines and put them into your Pokemon lines. So like your deck composition still has enough space for like ball search cards and rare candies and whatever cards we need to actually make a coherent deck, which I think is really important because throughout the history of the TCG, there's almost always been a timeline where just basic decks work better because they have more space to have consistency cards and just make sure they get online in the opening stages, and Pokemon's an inherently like snowbally game at times. So them giving us, it's still a shame because for me it's still going to be a feast or famine based on if you hit your combination pieces for these Stage 2s, but the indication that we will have playable Stage 1s, Stage 2s, and basics all living sort of in harmony in the ideal world. Obviously, they can promote that, and it's down for the testers to see how it's going to do in the end. But in theory, there's going to be options for everyone. Like myself, who just wants to have decent turn 1, 2s, and 3s or whatever, can still play mostly basic and Stage 1 EX decks, and other people who love having the most powerful abilities accessible to them and incredible like efficient attacks can go down the Stage 2 line. So I think they really are trying to add diversity. It was a key word they used in the trailer, of just having more Pokemon that are viable, and I think that's really awesome to see. But yeah, most of these cards were partials, as we see, the 330 hit points, the 220 damage. That's a really nice threshold to think about. Mimikyu, you'd imagine, is going to be like a lower hit point EX.
It's got 190. Another interesting thing with that as well is we can see, obviously we can't see the text of Lucario, but we can see Lucario's numbers.
Yeah.
And I think obviously this is complete speculation, but if you're looking at Magnezone doing 220 and then Lucario doing 160, maybe the basics are going to do sort of 100. That seems like fairly nice levels of power for these basic Stage 1s and Stage 2s to have, right? Because it means that the Stage 1s are two-shotting the Stage 2s, the Stage 2s are one-shotting the Stage 1s, and then the basics, and then the basics are sort of two-shotting the Stage 1s. So you're putting you're being able to put less effort in, like you say, with the basics, but you're evidently not going to be getting as powerful a card, which, like you say, it means that people really get to play the way they want, which is really, really cool, because I feel like we've basically been in a situation where, like, we haven't had a super strong. Well, I feel like GXs were the peak of stage 2s, essentially, and ever since they've, especially when we have like big basics and V stars and V max and that kind of stuff, it's really difficult to scale up one prize stage 2s to be able to compete with V maxes, right? Whereas this is a way of being able to do that. I think it still makes it hard to scale up normal stage 2s compared to a Magnezone EX, but you know, I think at least this is a step in the right direction, and we've already seen that even with all of the stage 2s they're releasing these days that still aren't doing anything, without a doubt they are definitely taking way more risks on these stage 2s. They're like the stage 2s we get, just because they can't compete with things like Arceus and Palkia and whatever, because these cards are obviously cracked, it doesn't mean the stage 2s they're printing are actually bad, because not a lot of them are bad. It's just they're bad in comparison. So I think they are, I feel like we say this so much, but I think they actually are on the right road in terms of working out how to balance this big mishmash of multi-prize Pokemon and multi-stage Pokemon and all of these different, because it's a really dynamic game with lots of different layers. It's not just print a card that beats a card. There's a lot to Pokemon and the evolution mechanic and that kind of stuff. And I think from what we've seen so far, this looks to be a sort of good compromise by really, really pushing the stage 2 Pokemon in terms of what you get from them, because they know that it's just way more resources that you have to spend to be able to get there.
Yeah, and I just think going back to the one prize like basics thing, I think in terms of getting punished for going second and whatnot, it feels way less impactful if you only have one prizes on your board, of course, and you can be the first one hitting into a 2-prize Pokemon as a response. Yeah. So it actually inherently makes the coin flip less impactful, which is one of a lot of people's biggest downsides of the format currently. Even though there's diversity and lots of great search and decks are all coherent, I think the coin flip still has too big of an impact on the game. And I think inherently having just a board full of one prizes for both players on the first turn or whatever means that's going to be much less impactful and give you much more comeback potential, which I think is amazing as well. And I think it's really important that they chose the lowercase EX, like, obviously very intentionally. They could have said they're bringing back GXs. They could have said they're bringing back uppercase EXs. But it's almost like an intention of them saying, we want to hark back to this era. We want the gameplay to feel similar, where there's, like, a couple basic EXs that can be thrown into decks just to give yourself some type coverage or different burst potential or interesting abilities. But then we still want you to be using evolving Pokemon for the majority of the game as your sort of main attacking threats. And I think that's very exciting for a number of people. And it's going to be a very different feel to the game that we've had for a number of years as well, which is just a really amazing thing to see. And I think it's going to really, you know, they call it the new standard, and I think it will be freshening up a whole lot there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, there's kind of 3 layers to this announcement. That was the first one. The second one is the Koraidon and the Miraidon sort of reveals that they did at the end, which is, they were kind of like partial reveals. They usually do this kind of partial thing at each Worlds. And these 2 cards, I think, to be honest, are going to be the ones that Joe and I actually speculate about the most, because there's some very key information that, again, they've obviously left this key information off for a reason. But we're going to get our tinfoil hats on a little bit and just kind of talk about some of the possibilities that could be about these cards. So yeah, these are 2 new EX Pokemon. We haven't actually touched on the different types of EXs, because it does look like there was one additional bit of information revealed, like a new Terra EX or something. We don't know exactly what that's going to be, but you can see definitely there are 2 different logos. So yeah, the 2 like half revealed Pokemon are definitely using this EX logo here. The one before, this EX logo here with like the blue border and the sort of metallic sheen rather than the crystal sheen. So I don't think this is anything to do with the Terra type thing that they, or the comeback Terra type, terastallizing, that kind of thing. Could be wrong about that though, because these cards, I think definitively do not look to me like a specific type of Pokemon card. I think they look inherently colorless, but I think that doesn't mean they are colorless, because I think they're very, very ambiguous, probably for a reason. Yeah. They've also left the types off. They've also left the energy types for the attack off, and the energy and the abilities, the energy and the abilities off. So There's loads to digest here. The first I think is the top left-hand corner. Obviously, we haven't seen how exactly these cards will be printed. If you just hark back to the picture of the three different types of EXs, Joe, I think we can kind of see that this sort of top left corner here is basic compared to stage 1 or stage 2. You can see that you've got Circle for Lucario. You can see that, well, you can't see it on this Magnezone, but you can see the Magneton and the Magnezone. But the basic Mimikyu, you definitely can't see the circle. And the exact
it looks like a 7 symbol, basically, right? You're making a 7, yeah.
So I think what we're looking at here is basic Pokemon. Interestingly, there was also a reveal for the VG that we'll briefly touch on that's basically what looks to be like a smaller version of these legendary Pokemon that maybe evolves into them a bit like the Cosmoem line or something like that. But yeah, this looks like these cards specifically are basic Pokemon. So first kind of tinfoil hat theory is they obviously mentioned this comeback mechanic. I think we could see this comeback mechanic in the form of maybe these are evolution Pokemon, and this little lizard guy that we're going to quickly have a look at in a little bit Cyclizar is actually what evolves into these. But this comeback mechanic that they briefly touched on is there will be certain printed EXs that are stage 2 Pokemon or whatever, but are treated as basic Pokemon, and you can put them straight down only if you're in this comeback position, whatever discerns that, which is pretty interesting, because it means that maybe, obviously, Dinocry and Tandem Unit are very, very strong abilities. Dinocry ends your turn after searching for 2 basic energy and attaching from your discard pile and attaching them to basic Pokemon on your board, and then Tandem Unit just searches for 2 basic Pokemon from your deck. Both of those are absolutely insane abilities, and I think realistically, if they were just going to print these cards, that would be a huge step up in terms of like power creep, right? So I think there will be some limitations to these cards, and I'm wondering whether it could be something to do with this comeback mechanic, however this is going to work, and you can only use these in certain instances, but you get these massive payoff cards. Again, Wild Impact and Photon Blaster are essentially the same attack as Zacian, which we know has been critical for the whole existence of Zacian being around. I'm pretty sure they're going to be 3 or 4 energy cost. It's kind of what you expect. But we know it's great, really efficient attack cost. It looks like it's going to be dealing with 2 prize Pokemon and just be short of KOing the sort of stage 1 EXs, but maybe we'll have some damage mods here and there, that kind of thing. So yeah, these look to be very, very powerful cards that look like basics, but we've kind of had hints that they're not basics. So is there some kind of interaction there in terms of how you get these cards actually into play?
Yeah, I think the abilities themselves are the biggest takeaway, that they sort of will be likely to be basics, because if Tandem Unit's on a stage 1, it's still usable, but it feels far worse, whereas having this ability, similar to like a throwback of a Hooper EX almost, makes a lot of sense to me. And then the Dino Cry, it reminds me of Intrepid Sword. Interesting that you're talking about Zacian already. It's like a much more flexible Intrepid Sword that's guaranteed, and that's obviously very strong. But it will be limited to possibly a type of Pokemon. Maybe they just don't want to reveal the types of these Koraidon and Miraidon. So I don't think we have full typing disclosed yet, have we?
No.
I think we'd imagine they're Dragon something, each of them.
Yeah.
But we don't really know yet.
All we know is Cyclizar is a normal Dragon type. So if we're assuming that there's some kind of evolutionary family there. I mean, it could be like a Manaphy Fion situation where they're not specifically related. I don't know. There's probably, like, bear in mind also, Joe and I have completely stayed clear of Scarlet and Violet leaks. Yeah. So, like, you guys could be watching this thinking, I know exactly what's going on here. But from our perspective, which means we're going to have to be really careful with the comments, Joe. From our perspective, we don't know what types these are. I don't think there's any doubt in either of our mind that these are both at least half Dragon type. But, you know, especially with the fact that terrestrializing is kind of the big thing of Gen 9 is being able to change your type at will.
Yeah.
There could be some really, really interesting things going on here.
Yeah, so just to be clear, we don't know for certain like what the symbols are going to be, of course. There's speculation there. With terrestrializing being so important to typing, we've already had a couple of theories between ourselves. Should we get into some of those?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's so many... The information they've left off is obviously so ambiguous, especially because the whole thing is types this year. but we're not seeing a type of the card. That could be because we're going to be like what's actually visible in that top right hand corner. It's going to be a brand new energy symbol that is sort of Terra type or whatever. That is going to be you're going to be able to adjust what type that is during this game
Sure.
for whatever reason, and because of that, it'll be like your basic Terra type. So maybe we'll have decks which have got some different basic energy types, some different basic Pokemon, and it's going to be we're moving to like a more of a toolbox type thing. There could be something like that. Maybe you pick one or two types. That's something that definitely could happen. I think it's unlikely because I think these cards become massive build arounds, and I don't think that's necessarily something that they want to stray away from. But also, it becomes a very very like limited format if you're just playing Koraidon and Miraidon decks with whatever basic types you've decided to add in.
Yeah, that's certainly one. I think another one that is almost like a throwback to a couple eras, like there's Holland potentially. Holland Pokemon were in Gen 3, and they were different types to the expected. But also there was the Crystal type Pokemon in Aquapolis and Skyridge. And that could be based on almost having like an ancient trait style text, because there is a lot of space on the bottom of both of these cards here, and it's intentionally like pushed up text to the top. There's potential space for almost like an ancient trait style thing where it's uninteractable part of the card, so like it's not an ability that can get shut off. It's a constant factor for some cards that can change their type based on the types of basic energy that are attached to them, or maybe even tool cards or something else that could be attached to these Pokemon that adapt their type, because terrestrialization is definitely going to be a key mechanic, and it seems like they're trying to align the TCG and the video game. They oftentimes do this, and this could be a really interesting way of doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, Holland and Delta species, I think is something that people always look back on and like, oh, I want to see another lightning type for alligator or whatever. I think if we don't get it now, I think there's obviously we get a new block every year, which kind of has a new mini mechanic.
Right.
I will be very surprised if we don't see it within the next 3 years of Scarlet and Violet, because it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Whether it's part of the initial release or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like you say, there's lots of space. I think there's a couple of other like really small things it could be. Something like having tools a bit like Sylvalia's drives. I don't think that would be particularly good, because it means finding the drive. It means putting the right drives in your deck for the tournament. I think that was a very cool, limited to Sylvali type effect. Sure. But it could be something like that. I don't think we're going to see something in the same vein as at the moment we have to flip our V-Star marker. I don't think there'll be any other peripherals to your board state to be able to do anything, because I think that will be too complicated. I think they like to keep, obviously in Expanded we have GXs and V-Star, sure, but like I think in Standard they will probably try and limit these types of effects to every 3 years or whatever. So I don't think we're going to see another peripheral added to the board to do something to make your Koraidon a new type or whatever. But I could be wrong. Maybe it genuinely could be so many different things. I wouldn't be surprised by anything.
Yeah.
It could be that these are just colorless types, and there's just some kind of new rule introduced to say, you know, that at some point during the game you're able to turn into a different type, give some kind of indication that you are. I don't really know. There's so many things they could do with this. It's really, really interesting, and the mind kind of boggles, to be honest. There's so many options that they could do with these.
Yeah, one of the more out there things I was thinking was potentially we could get multiple copies of the same cards, like multiple Miraidon, multiple Koraidon that have different types. Like you could pull a Fire Koraidon and like a Water Koraidon, and then just the symbols change on these cards, so that the TCG could basically identify based on these sorts of abilities and a few other Pokemon that could be pulled specifically and have different types, that could then almost become identities for certain archetypes. Like how we could see if we had, let's say, 3 different types of Koraidon, we could have like lightning, fire, and grass all having this sort of identity of energy acceleration, whereas if Miraidon was just 3 different types, like Psychic, Dark, and Metal or whatever, it could then have the identity of just having lots of good search available to it. So you have different avenues of deck building within types, and I think that becomes more and more difficult as sets progress, of course. So it's a bit more out there, but it's just another option, because you really have to think, why would they not show us these parts of the card? Specifically, these symbols as well are just so important and intriguing. that it's definitely an interesting one for us. And I think just one more thing on the terrestrialization and how you were talking about those GX markers and V-Star markers and such as we get to this part. Potentially there could even be, for the first time, side deck style cards where you can have cards off to the side that you're only able to bring into play when you're behind in the game. And you can be like, okay, I'm 2 prizes down, let's get my terrestrialized Koraidon and put it on top of my Koraidon EX or whatever. And I think, again, when you go back to the trailer, you hear them talking about how important these comeback mechanic style cards are. They didn't give us any examples. It could be something like this where it's going to overtake the V-Star mechanic or whatever. And yeah, we could have a real big comeback and not just what I think most people are expecting, cards in the EX era that were played, things like Scramble Energy, things like POW Hand Extension. I'd be really happy to see those cards, of course, but it could be even more outside the box. And we are being a bit speculative. We don't normally do sort of speculation videos, but it's very intriguing, I think, this time around.
Yeah, I think this is a really big one. And like you say, that whole idea of side deck, I think, is almost reinforced by the fact that they mentioned there's Pokemon trainers and energy cards that are all considered these comeback cards. Whether comebacks is a specific mechanic or whether it's just a theme of card, a bit like a Roxanne or a reset stamp or whatever, which is obviously subconsciously a comeback card, or whether somewhere on this trainer card or this Koraidon, maybe in that bottom bit of space that you've got there, it's something like comeback EX, which you can't put into your deck. But like you say, you've just got it onto the side and you're like, right, okay, I'm struggling right now. I'm down 2 or 3 prizes. I'm going to use my Koraidon, jump it into play. I'm having to put this 2-prizer into play, but because I'm behind on prizes or whatever, I'm able to use this Dino Cry ability. I have this really strong attack if I need to, and I'm able to try and get back into the game. Literally a comeback card, and maybe this will be limited at like 1 per deck. Obviously, we've had things like Ace Specs and Prism Stars and Radiant Pokemon, all of these things before, and the big issue with them is, especially when they're powerful ones like Tapu Koko or Computer Search or anything, whoever finds it first is in a really advantageous spot. If it's not in your deck and you don't have to worry about the RNG of drawing it, that's fantastic. It means you get to use it exactly when you think it's best used. It's like that V-Star Power or that GX move. You use it when you want to. It's introducing more decision-based gameplay, which will promote better players doing well and, sort of trying to improve the competitiveness of the game, that kind of stuff. But it takes away that really boring RNG element of, I didn't draw or I prized my Tapu Koko, or I didn't draw my Tapu Koko or whatever, which is something that's really interesting. And I've done countless hours on stream of speculation about how a side deck could work in Pokemon. And this, I think, is, if they want to keep it as simple as possible, this could be a really, really nice way of doing it.
Yeah, I think a comeback zone almost that sits outside the deck would be a very elegant solution. And then they can print powerful cards like Scramble Energy, which is an absurd effect, but when you're behind, you can really take advantage of it. And have it almost like an Ace Spec, where it competes with some other comeback-style cards, like a Countercatcher effect or like an N-style effect, where you compete them up against each other. So you're choosing at the beginning of the game which card you're going to use as your comeback card. And it would then, again, change deck building as well and give us even more options. So, yeah, I mean, overall, insane stuff. We're extremely happy with the EX mechanic. I think it's safe to say that's almost unanimous. We're really happy to see the acknowledgement of comeback cards. There was an era pre-Roxanne where it was pretty grim and you got very punished for slow starts, and basically the entire format was just be as many 4s as possible, as consistent as possible, because if you have a bad start, you lose. And we're starting to come out of that era now, and they are really listening to the players, which is incredible. And they've also got us very excited with some very cryptic cards. Me and Jack have gone full tinfoil with this one. So we'd love to hear your tinfoil theories down below. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, there was just a couple of other very minor points. So the first was that big sort of announcement at the end about the new standard coming 2023. Obviously, typically we have a rotation in September. We haven't had a rotation this time. I think this is almost kind of giving us a bit of a wink, saying we're going to be rotating in February. It was kind of speculated a lot. I think this is almost all but confirmation that when Scarlet and Violet is released, we will be getting a rotation. So keep that in mind. Obviously, that's not confirmation, but I think it's almost confirmation just from the phrasing, the new standard.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be anything. I've seen theories online about it, them scrapping everything and going like scrapping 8 sets or 12 sets or whatever. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I think it's just going to be the normal getting rid of 4 sets, Sword and Shield through to Vivid Voltage. But I think this is kind of pseudo confirmation. And to be honest, it sounds, obviously they'll probably see how this goes, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if this is kind of the thing going forward, because blocks start in February for the Western market, and it was always kind of weird to me that whilst the season ended in September and rotated in September, there was this really weird like portion in between September and when the new block started, where it was like a really small card pool and nothing like particularly new or interesting. So I think we could also be seeing right here, this could be the first confirmation that standard rotation will now be in February, which would be really interesting, because mid-season rotations are actually I think there's something that Pokemon should explore way more. So yeah, it will be really interesting. And I guess the other thing we should kind of mention is probably where Worlds is next year.
Yeah, so the roof was already being taken off at this point, but it got even more crazy. After the amazing trophy announcements, there was one more to go, so let's jump to that now.
Once again, congratulations to all of you on your performance this weekend.
最後にもう一つ皆さんにお知らせしたいことがあります。
There's one more thing I'd like to share with you.
それは来年の世界大会の開催地です。
And that is next year's location for the Pokemon World Championships.
こちらです。
Here it is.
So, I went absolutely berserk when this happened, and I had genuine goosebumps while I was watching it as well, getting the old red and blue Kanto region back in here as well. Amazing to see. I wasn't even spoiled on this either, despite being on the desk, so this was brand new news to me, which is insane, that they were able to keep it stum for literally everyone involved, even in the production most of the time. So, yeah, amazing stuff to see. Really motivating for myself and Jack, who have neither of us have been to Japan, and it's always been on our bucket list anyway. But now we have no excuse, and we're going to make a real holiday of things, try and get out there for a couple weeks, including the tournament, of course. So, yeah, very motivating for events in 2023, Jack. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds absolutely brilliant. I got goosebumps watching it again there. It's just unreal. It's almost indescribable, the electricity in that room when the announcement was made. It was absolutely incredible.
People were standing up,
people
applauding.
Around me.
There were people crying.
People around me were in tears. It was incredible. So, yeah, and especially, like you say, from our perspective, it's pushed us even further to drive to get an invite next year and be able to compete in literally the homeland of Pokemon against some fantastic players that, especially from Japan, we would probably never ever get to interact with normally, because they obviously it's very, very difficult to achieve a Worlds invite from the Japanese side of sort of playing. So yeah, it's going to be absolutely insane. I think also as well, it's given us the drive to at least, like if nothing else, push like our content here as well as much as we can, because we're going to be so on it this year in terms of wanting to make sure we get there. And honestly, I think this already has hallmarks of being one of the best Worlds, if not the best World ever.
We've just come off the best Worlds ever, in my opinion, and they're going to top it again, which is insane.
And I think that for us as content creators as well is such good motivation for wanting to create fantastic videos and really wanting to be on the top of our game as well. So yeah, the announcement was absolutely unreal. I can't actually describe how, like I say, the electricity in the room when they revealed it. So many people were like, "Oh, getting on a boat. Oh, and where we're sailing to," and then it just stopped and it showed Vermilion's city, and everyone's jaws sort of dropped. They were like, "No, no way." And then it obviously scratched it out, and yeah, it was incredible.
What I love is every year at Worlds, you hear the rumors, oh, it's going to be Japan, it's coming home. And you literally just brush that off. Like, I've heard it all before. Literally every year I hear these rumors, and it's just copium almost every time. But now it actually comes true, and it's just so insane. And
I think
now it throws everything we knew about the World Champions out the window. Like, the possibilities are literally endless now.
I think there is genuine merit to being able to say that Worlds could be in any country now.
Yeah.
Worlds is truly a World Championships now. It could be, obviously, especially in Europe, there's different laws to do with gambling, this, that, and the other. But we could see an Australian World Championships. We could see a Latin American World Championships. We could see somewhere crazy like Egypt or somewhere in the Netherlands or somewhere like that. It could be absolutely anywhere now. I still think they will definitely go back to some of the mainstays of the US, Hawaii, California, Orlando, Washington. I think we're going to see more of those still, of course, but I think we could very easily go back and forth like a US location and then a non-US location, a US location and a non-US location, and that would be brilliant, honestly, because there's so many like you just get to travel to so many different places. We already do. Just from the good fortune of living in Europe and being able to go to different regionals in all of these different countries, it's already fantastic. But now being able to say, "Oh, I've played a World Championships in America and in Europe, and soon in Japan as well," it's just incredible. It's something that, like you say, everyone's always like, "Oh, of course it will be in Japan one day," but it never is. It never is. It never is. Well, now it finally is going to be in Japan.
Yeah, the Pokemon literally just giving us life-changing experiences is just amazing. I'm sure there are many people who have never been to Europe before coming to London, and now there are so many people who, of course, Pokemon lovers will naturally love Japan. There is a lot for us to do there. Us nerds will be in heaven. So it's a real exceptional treat. And like you said, it's really motivating for us to stay very engaged in the game this year. Try and work towards day 2 invites if we can and have a deep run. But the best part is if you do badly at Worlds, you get more time in Japan anyway. So it's a real win-win situation.
Yeah.
All right,
that's going to be incredible.
That's going to wrap things up today because we've already rambled. Let us know about how you're going to try and make your way to Japan, what you're thinking about the new standard, and any other tinfoil hat theories you may have heard. I'd love to hear it all down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.